I'm going to be talking a little bit about the role of natural gas liquids in dealing with the pandemic. And you can't talk about natural gas liquids without going back to where they come from. Natural gas liquids are a part of what we call wet gas. And wet gas is basically natural gas or methane that has other hydrocarbons entrained in it. And as you see from this map from Penn State, there's a bit of a dividing line in Pennsylvania into northern West Virginia, where you see wet gas to the west of that line, dry gas primarily to the east of that line. And that wet gas obviously contains those extra hydrocarbons, ethane, propane, butane, isobutane, and a mix of pentanes that we call natural gasoline. This infrastructure developed really, especially in the southwestern part of Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, and northern West Virginia, thanks to the shale revolution. It really came online not that long ago. And while I know that we're not here to talk about legislation, I would like to stop for just a second and thank some of our co-chairs for their work and allowing this infrastructure to develop. I understand both Representatives Nelson and Nielsen are just put out a co-sponsorship memo highlighting investment in infrastructure. This infrastructure is important. Similarly, Senator Bartolotta has introduced legislation, I believe that's Senate Bill 692, that provides a lot of predictability in the permitting process from the burner tip from the wellhead to the burner tip to allow this infrastructure to develop on a predictable basis. Just want to thank you all for that. How did we help and what was the role of natural gas liquids in dealing with the pandemic? Natural gas liquids are absolutely instrumental to all of the personal protective equipment, medical equipment, you name it, for what we had and what we needed to deal with the pandemic. It's noted on here as rubber gloves, but most of the gloves that you see, like surgical gloves, are nitrile gloves, and butadiene is the main ingredient from that, and that obviously comes from natural gas liquids. Goggles and visors, those are kind of the harder plastics. We're talking polypropylene. Polypropylene is very important to these products, as is polyethylene. Polyethylene is usually for the more flexible products, whether it's a saline bag or tubes and things. And so you see in the example of syringes, you see polyethylene for the little stopper that inside of the syringe and polypropylene for the syringe housing itself. One note about polypropylene that I failed to mention earlier, we make some polypropylene in Pennsylvania at a Braskem facility in southeastern Pennsylvania. And I don't know if you recall from the early days of the pandemic, that facility made national news when upwards of, I believe, 43 employees stayed in the plant, isolated themselves in the plant to keep that plant running for nearly a month. I think it was like 28 days, so that they could continue making round-the-clock polypropylene to help with the efforts to deal with the pandemic. One thing that we wanted to call out in particular is the role that natural gas liquids play with the actual COVID vaccines. As you see, from refrigeration to transporting the vaccines to the syringes, as I already mentioned, the vials, natural gas liquids play an important role. And from the did you know category, both the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines utilize a natural gas liquid, polyethylene glycol, in the actual vaccine itself. From what I understand, the polyethylene glycol plays a critical role in protecting the elements of the vaccine. So natural gas liquids not only playing a role in the delivery of these vaccines, not necessarily the transportation, but the delivery of the vaccine into your body, but the actual vaccine itself.
As we know, we have an abundant supply of natural gas, and that has made fuel for generating power very competitive against coal and nuclear. The shale phenomenon alone has resulted in the prolific production of natural gas, reducing costs to generate power across the nation, so not just strictly in Pennsylvania. In addition to the baseload power, hospitals and large buildings are switching from diesel to natural gas to use to run their microturbines, which is basically their backup generation. And it's also improving efficiencies and further reducing emissions by doing so. So let's talk about that combined heat and power, so, or CHP, as you'll see it referred to a lot in a lot of areas. The increased use of natural gas in various locations through CHP, combined heat and power units, has lowered energy costs for many of the hospitals that have switched to clean burning natural gas. Out here in the western part of the state, People's Natural Gas has an entire program to converting buildings throughout the Pittsburgh regions, and I said yes, buildings, to CHP. And in fact, the emissions are so low, that's eliminating a lot of the needs for some of the scrubbing or environmental equipment, which then benefits the hospitals in that instance too. So what's happening there is they're taking the natural gas and they're using it to generate electricity, but then they're also capturing the heat or the exhaust that comes off of it, and they're utilizing that to either put into a steam system, and from there they can heat water, they can use it for radiators, they can then use it for cooling. Many of the hospitals, as we know, are considered infrastructure or necessities, have been switching over to natural gas through the combined heat and power. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency reports that methane emissions from the nation's onshore and offshore natural gas between 2011 and 2016 dropped by 14 million metric tons, a testament to the fact that the energy industry continues to improve technology to control their methane emissions from all aspects of operations. And scientists will tell you that they estimate, if we look at the methane emissions, it needs to be below 3.2% to total to ensure the realization of environmental benefits from the increased use of natural gas. 14 independent studies, including academia, government agencies, have determined that the rate was actually only 1.4%. This is a flyer that we put out about this time last year. If we look at the average emergency room, they have over 100 different items that come from natural gas or oil that we can't get anywhere else.
Pennsylvania, how we fit into this is that we are the #2 natural gas producer in the country, only behind Texas. And in additional, to give you some numbers here, when you take a look at the oil and natural gas industry as a whole in Pennsylvania, our industry supports 500,000 jobs. So these are jobs from the production site all the way to retail gasoline stations. We generate billions of dollars going into the coffers here in Pennsylvania annually. And we don't only power our lives here in Pennsylvania by providing the energy here for us to live our daily life, but we also are the building blocks for thousands of products that make our modern life possible. So you take a look at this chart here, and what is our energy picture going to look like by year 2040? And what IEA has put together here is that natural gas and oil will continue to lead in the energy space. So what they're predicting is that 46% of our energy needs will be coming from oil and natural gas. So they project that that will supply close to half of the world's energy in 2040, and 62% or more of the world transportation sector demand. And this is even if every other nation meets the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. So as the world leader in natural gas and oil production, U.S. is in a strong position for economic growth and can remain safe in the world because of access to energy. Okay, so here you have a picture of the construction sites of the Shell petrochemical complex. I know that was already mentioned by my colleague Dave, but this is the kind of project that deserves to be mentioned more than once. So the petrochemical complex is the perfect example of how Pennsylvania can attract a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar manufacturing project. And recent studies and analysis have shown that we have enough natural gas to support several cracker plants in this state. This particular plant in Beaver County is targeted to open in 2022. This facility is already an economic engine by producing thousands of construction jobs, over 6,000 construction jobs at the height of this project. And when it opens, it will maintain about 600 permanent employees. And natural gas and oil is absolutely fundamental for manufacturing facilities like this. And with policies that support domestic natural gas and oil, Pennsylvania has the opportunity to boost manufacturing and make projects such as PPE right here at home. So, and again, I think Dave mentioned this a little bit too. Not only is this project important in its own right, but it's what it's going to do for that supply chain and why other manufacturers will want to locate here to be close to this facility that will have the ethane and converting it into polyethylene, which is the building blocks and feedstocks to many other manufactured goods.